narrative began to change. The strong rhetoric of opposition was quickly replaced by procedural caution. In January 2025, when the Catholic Bishops' Conference met with President Mahama to urge him to pass the bill, he signaled his intent to introduce fresh government-sponsored legislation that would more strictly and more comprehensively address the practices and promotion of LGBTQ and its related activities in Ghana. On another occasion, in contrast, while addressing the clergy, President Mahama declared the previous bill, quote unquote, effectively dead because it had expired with the 8th Parliament. He argued further that moving forward, in quotes, and I quote, probably shouldn't be a private member's bill. It probably should be a government bill with government behind it after consultation with all stakeholders. End of quote. This was the first clear signal of a shift from rhetoric to risk management. Faced with the realities of governance, including risk to World Bank and IMF funding, as well as constitutional challenges, the NDC government moved from push the bill at all costs to manage how it is introduced and structured. President Mahama has been playing a dangerous double game. As the African Human Rights Coalition aptly noted on March 28, 2026, and I quote, President John Dramani Mahama has presented two faces to the world, one tailored for Ghanaian voters at home, and another carefully curated for American audiences abroad. While promising Ghanaians at home that he supports the bill in principle, he travels abroad and sings a completely different tune. Standing before the American institutions, his certainty dissolves into procedural language, deflection, and appeals to the democratic process. Today, the president hides behind the fact that it is a private member's bill to wash his hands off it, outlining and citing constitutional pathways to delay or reject the legislation. It is no wonder that Lincoln University rightfully cancelled this honorary doctorate. Even the international community sees through this strategic doublespeak. The ultimate betrayal, the smuggling of LGBTQ into our schools, rather very disappointing. Perhaps the most devastating contradiction of all lies in the NDC's approach to our educational system, which is the smuggling of the LGBTQ agenda into our schools. In that same January 2025 engagement with the Catholic Bishops' Conference, President Mahama proposed an alternative to legislation. The National Council for Curriculum and Assessment was forced to acknowledge, initially they denied, but eventually when we provided them proof, they were forced to acknowledge a controversial pro-LGBT definition of gender, another related concept, in senior high school teachers' manual. Although the government hastily labeled this as a mistake and an anomaly after being caught red-handed, the fact remains that the official documents were approved, printed, circulated, and implemented by the government with NACA and Ghana Education Service as the lead implementing agencies under the supervision of the Ministry of Education. They even further lied to the public in their press statement that they had further recalled those books. Go to all the schools, ask the teachers who teach these subjects. The books still remain on their shelves. None of these books have been recalled. They further looked Ghanaians in the eye and lied to them. President Mahama promised to use the curriculum to protect our children from LGBTQ influence. Instead, his government used the curriculum to covertly lay the groundwork to indoctrinate them and to set his agenda. And when you check page 107 and page 108 of the recommendations of the Constitutional Review Committee, you would find another covert introduction attempt to introduce LGBT into the bedrock of our Constitution, should the Constitutional Review process pass. conclusion and demands. Gentlemen of the press, the National Democratic Congress has shown its true colors. The real shift we are witnessing is beyond ideology. It is purely deception. They exploited the genuine moral concerns of Ghanaians as a stepping stone to power. They weaponized it to deceive the public, only to turn around in power to abandon the pursuits, and have now deprioritized those concerns at the altar of political convenience and international appeasement. Now, therefore, the New Patriotic Party, together with the overwhelming majority of Ghanaians, demand the following: the immediate realignment of President Mahama's priorities. Say that sovereignty resides in the people. Therefore, President John Dramani Mahama must realign his priorities in line with the real priorities of the overwhelming majority of Ghanaians, specifically the 93% of Ghanaians who, according to the CDD Ghana Afrobarometer survey, consider the practices of LGBTQ and related activities highly repugnant to the societal values and religious beliefs, and crave a potent legislation to urgently address the canker. 93% of Ghanaians consider LGBT canker and its clampdown a major priority. President Mahama, realign your priorities in line with that of the people you serve. Basic needs have not changed since 2024. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, you will agree with us on that. The president is therefore expected to fulfill his promise to introduce his government-sponsored bill, which he promised the clergy and the religious leaders to comprehensively address LGBTQ issues. He made those promises willingly. He must be held to account and be made to fulfill this promise. Second, an apology to the clergy, to the imams, Muslim clerics, and traditional leaders. The NDC and President John Dramani Mahama must apologize to the Christian Council, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, GPCC, and all other ecumenical bodies, the office of the Chief Imam, and our imams, our Muslim clerics, traditional rulers, and concerned CSOs for the double standards and contradictory priorities demonstrated between the period of opposition and now in power. Additionally, we call on the clergy, our Muslim clerics, communal bodies, traditional rulers, the civil society organizations to call out the NDC and President John Dramani Mahama on their U-turn on LGBT issues to maintain their spirited advocacy for the passage of the pending bill, and for President Mahama to sign same into law as soon as it is passed by the 9th Parliament. The Majority Leader, Honorable Mahama Yariga, and the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbe, to ensure the swift passage of the reintroduced bill without further delay tactics orchestrated by the deletion of the advertised bill from the order paper, only to be relisted after 7 months of pressure. We put pressure on them. They relisted it. But even for it to be relisted for first reading, a referral which was made to the Committee on Constitution and Legal, and to date, not even a single meeting has been called to consider it, has not been attended to. Clearly, somebody was receiving instruction from the Jubilee House and showing them and equipping them on which priorities they should attend to. Very, very sad. Ghanaians expect the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill to be passed urgently by Parliament at the earliest resumption of Parliament. And to those of our colleagues who still are part of this bill and who promised Ghanaians that when President Mahama is voted into power, if he drags his feet on the legislation, they will mount pressure. They will put pressure. We are waiting to hear that pressure, to see that pressure, and to experience that pressure being mounted visibly on the president to do the needful. Because more than ever before, we have never seen LGBT activities state-sponsored in our history, never have we seen a state-sponsored and state-endorsed as we see today. We recall in this regime, we have seen two men who came all the way from South Africa to openly, brazenly advocate for LGBT and mount spirited campaign under our national monuments, the Independence Act, and other sacred places under the full glare of national security apparatus. They shepherded them. They went back safe. And remains committed to the principles and the most cherished values that bind us together as a nation. Check our ideology as a conservative party. Check our ideologies just like every other conservative party across the world. The Republic Party. President Trump in office has given clear policy direction to all his foreign envoys, conservative values, under the leadership of a party that is conservative, even in the United States, that this government is so fearful of and now running away, deprioritizing LGBT fights. President Trump and the Republican Party, conservative party like the NPP, have introduced legislations that cut off funding to schools, which will not cease implementing LGBT consent. So this is an era that the president of Ghana should not even be deprioritizing. But again, they are Liberal Party, but we are conservative party. Our principles are clear. The two parties are distinct and different in our values. We will not allow the NDC to further play politics with our sensitive cultural and religious heritage. We scammed cocoa farmer, we promised him, and we filled the price and reduced it. We scammed the whole country that we were going to tackle Galamsey, turn away, and now we've even polluted our waters and destroyed our environment the more. You promised the youth 24-hour jobs, one job, 3 shifts, 3 persons, formation 133, only to turn around and it's a host. You promised the youth security jobs, only to take their monies amounting to over 111 million cedis to scam them for only 5,000 places. And later turn around and say you doubled it to 10,000. What happens to over 490,000? But you can scam all these. But it's most unconscionable to look our Muslim clerics, imams in the face, our clergy, our pastors, our apostles, our bishops, our reverend fathers in the face, our chiefs, our nananum, our brempons in the face, and scam them on LGBT. Most unconscionable.